Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another Tea Time with Tia for Geek Vibes Nation. I'm your host, Tia, and I have with me, of course, my tea, and I have my coldest water bottle, which you'll find a description for it down below in the description. But yeah, I just, as usual, when I'm sitting there and thinking about topics that I want to talk about for tea time, it literally just kind of pops up. I know I should probably have more of a scheduled sort of content calendar where I put things out based on maybe what's going on, but literally it's stuff that just pops in my head, and I'll be in the middle of maybe working on my computer and then suddenly I go, oh, let me go sit down and record a tea time, and that's literally how it goes. And also I wanted to try out, I got a brand new microphone for Christmas, so I thought it was really cool. Hopefully that's not super loud when it plays back. But yeah, so I got a new microphone for Christmas and I wanted to try it out. I tested it before I set to record this video and it sounded really good. So yeah, thank you, Mom and Dad, for that Christmas present. But before I go any further with this tea time, you should know that there are spoilers for Wonder Woman 1984. Wonder Woman 1984 is the sequel to the original Wonder Woman, not the original, the Wonder Woman movie with Gal Gadot in it. And it was the 1984. I cannot talk today. The 1984 was released on Christmas Day, and it was released in theaters and HBO Max. So again, spoilers for those who have not seen this movie. I watched it on Christmas at nighttime when I was kind of just relaxing, and I wasn't originally going to watch it on actual Christmas Day, but I figured I have nothing else to watch. Let me put it on because I'm sure there's going to be spoilers on the internet. Now, you can read my coworker Dom, his review on geekvibesnation.com. I think he liked the movie a lot more than I actually liked it. I wouldn't say it's the worst movie. I see a lot of people online who describe it as really terrible, it was awful, and I always want more of a constructive criticism than that. I certainly don't think it was, say, terrible. I just think that, and this is my opinion, if you know me, you know that I just think in general the DCEU has a problem with kind of making really strong movies. Their movies seem a little looser in my opinion, and that was the problem with Wonder Woman 1984, which is such a shame because I was really looking forward to this movie. When the trailer dropped, I put it up there. I remember, say, it was up there with the Thor Ragnarok trailer, the frickin' Avengers Infinity War trailer. I mean, it was top tier. I was so excited sitting there going, God, I cannot wait for this movie to come out. This is going to blow us away. You have, Gal Gadot is such a great Diana Prince. Kristen Wiig looked really good as Cheetah, and Pedro Pascal. Who doesn't love me some Pedro Pascal? I mean, you all probably are getting introduced to him in The Mandalorian, but I remember him from his Narcos days. So, yeah, Pedro Pascal, seeing him as this 1980s sleazy salesman, I thought was just so cool. And I was just really excited for it. And unfortunately, it kind of let me down. I think my expectations were too high. I felt that the 80s tacky aesthetic didn't work. I feel like ever since Stranger Things has come out, shows and movies are trying to capitalize on that nostalgia from the really overly pastel colors of the 80s, but for some reason, like, Stranger Things does it where it works. Like in season 3, when it was taking place in the summer and we saw the big malls and all that, I mean, it was so 80s, but it worked, and I feel like they were trying to maybe capitalize on that same sort of nostalgia in 1984. But literally there was no reason for it to take place in 1984 other than the fact that maybe they wanted to show what was Diana up to since we were first introduced to her in the first Wonder Woman, or maybe they thought that this would kind of quell any sort of questions where people would say, oh, well, how does this connect to the DCEU? How does this connect to Zack Snyder's Justice League and yada, yada, yada? It's like, okay, well, let's put it in the 80s so no one can ask that. I don't know what the reasoning was for it, but it didn't work. And I could probably go on with a lot of other things that I felt I didn't necessarily like in this movie, but I also don't feel like spending that time to say all that, because not only, again, do we have a review for Wonder Woman 1984 from Dom on the podcast, but not the podcast, on our site, but also we did a podcast where we went through 1984, and I kind of said my piece with that, so I really don't feel like going through it again. The one thing that I wanted to touch upon was the absolute... What am I thinking of? I can't even think of the word. I'm sorry. The absolute, like, no reason why Steve Trevor was in this movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Chris Pine. I was a huge fan of the Star Trek reboot movies where he played Captain Kirk. Thought he was great in it. He, played Steve Trevor, the love interest of Wonder Woman, and he was so great in the first movie, and he was her lost love and all that. And it felt like they should have just left him like that. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind when a fan favorite gets brought back to life. I mean, I'm a Loki fan and he gets brought back all the time. But it's kind of similar to the sense of James Gunn was asked if he would ever bring back Yondu after having killed him off in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And he said no, because it would absolutely, just reverse the sentiment and how meaningful that was. So I felt like Steve Trevor's sacrifice in the original movie just meant so much that it should have been that was it. That was the last that we saw of him, and it's Diana learning to live without him, and we don't really get that in 1984. Obviously, we know that she's thinking of him. It's the 80s. His death happened in the 40s, so obviously she's had plenty of time to think about it. But we don't really see it because kind of very quickly into the movie, Diana makes a wish from the wishing stone that Steve Trevor would come back, and he does. In a very unconventional way. I remember when we saw the trailer, this is not a spoiler for that sense, because in the trailer we knew that Chris Pine was returning as Steve Trevor, and we all sat there wondering, how is this possible? And it was essentially that he came back in another person's body. So yes, Chris Pine was playing him just for our eyes probably, so that we didn't get confused. But in reality, Diana was seeing a different person, just kind of going on the whim that was Steve Trevor. Very weird, very loose. I didn't like it. I think I spoke to people who did kind of like the explanation. I just personally didn't. In my opinion, I just didn't like that. But yeah, so that was weird, and really all he served was to kind of just be there so that maybe Diana wasn't alone during the movie. I really don't know other than that. I didn't really find it to be that warming or anything, and then ultimately we knew that she couldn't have him forever, and in the middle of her realizing how damaging Maxwell Lord's abilities are, she has to renounce her wish and get rid of Steve Trevor. And he says something during it, right, where she's having to make that decision. She's really going against wanting to renounce her wish because she wants to be selfish, which is, not selfish in a bad way. She wants to think of herself, where she wants to finally have the love of her life back. And he says to her, Diana, I'm already gone. And in a sense, that's true. I mean, this has all kind of been a facade. I mean, do we even know that Steve Trevor came back, or was this all an illusion, really? And again, realizing that she wasn't looking at the face of Chris Pine's Steve Trevor, she was looking at the face of some random Joe Schmo who said that he was Steve Trevor, and I guess through a connection she realizes that it's actually Steve Trevor. But Yeah, I mean, if anything, this really served to kind of take away from Steve's sacrifice in the original Wonder Woman. I didn't like it. I think Wonder Woman is strong enough to stand on her own, where she doesn't need her love interest around. If you had wanted her love interest to stick around, then I don't think that he should have been killed off in the first movie, and then just kind of let him rest, let him be dead, pretty much. As I said before, not that I mind seeing Chris Pine again, who doesn't love them some Chris Pine, but I just think as far as story goes, it was a really sort of sloppy insert into the story that really, it just... And there were some scenes with him that were just really awkward and felt forced. There's a scene where they're in the jet and they're literally trying to escape from authorities, and then suddenly they take a pause to check out fireworks. I mean, you had during this whole thing Diana trying to show Steve what the future was, and it was kind of like, oh, look, cool, he's discovering the 80s, so different from the 40s, which obviously they were, but it just, again, felt so out of place for the movie and the flow of things. That was the thing. It really felt like Wonder Woman 1984 was trying its hand at comedy, which I don't particularly mind. I'm a big fan of the MCU, and even during its most serious scenes and moments and movies, there's always a great deal of comedic timing, and what this movie lacked was the comedic timing to make that right. They just felt like they didn't know where to place those funny or heartwarming bits, and it just didn't make sense as far as the succession of the actual film. So I just felt like Steve Trevor's inclusion in the movie was just really awkward, and I think that was one of the things that stood out to me as to why I was sitting there saying, I'm not really the biggest fan of this movie because of decisions like that. Now, granted, it has been greenlit that there's going to be a third Wonder Woman, which I'm happy with. Again, I'm not trashing the movie. It had some really redeeming moments. I liked the more lighthearted imagery in the film. It certainly helped me see things as opposed to the usual dark DC that, again, I can't see anything. Gal Gadot is a great Wonder Woman. I actually really liked Pedro Pascal's character. I just wish they had done a little bit more with him, but I mean, he honestly was a standout to me. He chewed the scenery like nobody's business, but as someone who's a fan of Pedro Pascal, I could tell you, of course, that he's a great freaking actor. So anyway, Wonder Woman has been greenlit for a third movie. Patty Jenkins is going to be back to return. Gal Gadot is going to be back to star. I'm hoping they get a better writer for this, because I think Gal Gadot has showed that she plays a great Diana. Patty Jenkins shows that she can direct really well. It's whoever is writing these films that maybe needs to kind of be replaced. So let's get that. Let's get a great Wonder Woman 3, because this is a trilogy that deserves to be to end on a high note, pretty much. And maybe not have us wait 1,000 years for the third film. But yeah, so that's really what I wanted to come on and say. If you agree with me that Steve Trevor's inclusion in Wonder Woman 1984 kind of took away from the film and was unnecessary, please let me know. Or if you disagree, please let me know. No hate, though. Let's keep this constructive. Let's have a dialogue. And if you really loved Wonder Woman 1984 and believe that Steve Trevor's inclusion was necessary, I want to hear why. Maybe you'll change my mind. So let's do that. Make sure you like and subscribe. Comment down below. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram, Geek Vibes Nation. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at TiaFabi. It has been wonderful speaking to you all. I hope that you had a very happy new year, because by the time this comes out, it'll be 2021. As I say, the clock strikes midnight and not everything's going to go back to normal, but let's hope at least a month or so in, we can go to some sort of normalcy, or at least more comfortability than we've experienced in 2020, and hopefully no more delays with our movies, because we have a lot coming up. We have Black Widow, the Suicide Squad, we have Eternals, we have Shang-Chi, we have all the amazing Disney Plus content. For all those out there who are Zack Snyder fans, you have the Snyder Cut coming out on HBO Max of the Justice League. So let's just keep positive that 2021 is going to be awesome, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!